She whispered, "You're making it hard for me to be good," while I was cleaning her pool. "You're making it hard for me to be good." That's what she whispered, just low enough that no one else would hear, just loud enough to detonate something inside me. I was kneeling by her pool pump, sweat trickling down my spine, mind somewhere between chlorine levels and weekend plans. Then suddenly, that sentence, that voice. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them. I looked up and saw her standing over me. Karen. Early 40s, flawless posture, flowy blouse, bare feet against the warm patio tile. The kind of woman who always looked composed, like nothing ever surprised her. Except maybe me. It was supposed to be just another job, another name on the schedule, a quick in and out, clean the filters, balance the water, get on with my day. But the moment I stepped into her backyard, everything shifted. The pool was pristine, the lawn trimmed to perfection. Palm trees swayed like they were on payroll. And then there was her Karen offering me lemonade before I even set down my gear. Most people treat me like background noise, I'd said once to my coworker. She didn't. From the start, she was different. Not just polite, not just grateful. Present. Curious. Intimidating in the way only truly self-possessed people can be. And yet, there was something behind her smile that didn't match the picture-perfect patio or the million-dollar view. Loneliness. The kind of loneliness that wears expensive perfume, keeps wine glasses chilled, and looks for excuses to talk longer than necessary. I should have known better. I should have kept things professional, focused on the job, kept my distance. But I was young, hungry for connection, for danger, maybe for something I didn't even understand yet. So when she leaned in that afternoon, her voice like velvet and citrus and sin, and whispered those words, "You're making it hard for me to be good." I didn't laugh. I didn't run. I just stood there, every sense sharpened, every warning drowned by the pounding of my heart. And from that moment on, I knew this job wasn't just about the pool anymore. After she whispered those words, "You're making it hard for me to be good," I stood frozen for half a second too long. My heart beat in my throat, and I wasn't sure if I should laugh, apologize, or run. Instead, I did what any overwhelmed 22-year-old guy would do. I said nothing. I smiled awkwardly, and I went back to scrubbing the side of the filter box like it held the meaning of life. She walked away slowly. Not in retreat, but like she knew exactly what effect she'd had and didn't need to linger. The sway in her walk, intentional. Her silence afterward, calculated. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. I tried to shake it off focus on finishing the job. I double-checked the chlorine levels, backwashed the filter again, even though it didn't need it, and made a show of tightening every bolt on the pump. But it was all a blur. My focus was shot. When I finally rinsed off my tools and packed them up, the sun was low and the sky was a soft amber. I told myself I'd get in the truck, send a professional thank you message, and that would be that. But then she appeared again. "You're really dedicated," she said, stepping out barefoot, arms folded, eyes holding mine a little too long. "I like to do a good job," I replied. "Would you mind coming in for just a minute before you go? I made dinner. It'd be a shame to waste it." The words hung in the air. She said it gently, like it wasn't a big deal, like this was totally normal. But we both knew it wasn't. Still, I said yes. I told myself it was just food. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. She was being polite, that was all. But when I walked inside, something shifted. The lights were dim, the table already set for two. Candles flickered. A bottle of wine sat unopened in the middle. This wasn't about food. She handed me a plate and poured sparkling water. We talked. Easy stuff. Her career in real estate, my work with the pool company. She spoke with poise, years of independence folded into every sentence. But there were cracks, moments where her voice softened, where the armor slipped just a little. "I built all this," she said, motioning around the house, "but sometimes it feels like I built a kingdom I don't know how to live in." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and listened. And then, halfway through the meal, she leaned back in her chair, swirling her glass. "Let me ask you something, Nick," she said. Have you ever done something completely out of character? I blinked. Honestly, no, I've always played it safe. Work, save, repeat. That's a shame, she replied, her voice like velvet over glass. Life's too short not to take a risk once in a while. She stood, walked toward the window, then turned back toward me. Her blouse caught the light just right, and for a second I forgot to breathe. I don't mean anything crazy, she added, just letting go. Being spontaneous. Doing something different for once. Like what I asked, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. A night drive, a barefoot walk on the beach, music too loud, coffee too late. Just a few hours of freedom. I hesitated. It was the kind of thing that sounded innocent, harmless. But with her, with that voice, with everything unsaid between us, it wasn't harmless. It was a step off the ledge. But something inside me stirred. The part that had been stuck in routine. The part that wanted to know what it felt like to be reckless just once. Okay, I said finally. Yes. Her face lit up. Not like she'd won something, but like she'd just taken a breath for the first time in days. Good. Go get changed. Meet me back here in an hour. We'll take my car. I left with my head spinning, adrenaline buzzing like caffeine in my veins. On the drive home, I kept asking myself, what are you doing? But I didn't turn around. I showered, changed, stood in front of the mirror longer than I should have. By the time I pulled into her driveway again, the sky was fading to dusk, and her silver convertible sat waiting top down like something out of a music video. She opened the door before I could knock. You made it, she smiled. I said I would. We drove along the coast, windows down, music low, her hair dancing in the wind. She didn't ask questions. She didn't fill the silence. She just let it stretch between us like it was meant to be there. First stop, a tucked-away beachfront bar with string lights and sea salt in the air. She ordered white wine. I stuck with soda. We sat in a booth by the window talking about everything and nothing. She made me laugh. She made me forget myself. She made me feel seen. Later we drove again, this time to a cliffside overlook. She spread a blanket on the hood of her car, and we sat shoulder to shoulder watching the ocean shimmer beneath the moonlight. And then she turned to me. Do you know why I really asked you to come out tonight? I shook my head. Because I haven't laughed like this in a long time, she said. And I needed to remember what it felt like. The way she said it, soft, vulnerable cut, deeper than I expected. She wasn't just being flirty. She was showing me something real. Me too, I said. And we sat there saying nothing else, letting the waves crash and the stars blink and the silence wrap around us like a warm coat. The drive back to her house felt like floating. Neither of us said much. The wind moved through the convertible like a whisper, the coastline glowing under the quiet rhythm of the moonlight. I caught her looking over at me, once her expression unreadable, part content, part cautious. I didn't ask. I didn't want to ruin it. When we pulled into her driveway, the night had settled thick around us. It was late, later than I'd stayed out in months, but I didn't feel tired, just aware. Every moment felt sharpened. The scrape of her keys in the lock, the click of the front door closing behind us, the soft sigh she let out as she stepped out of her sandals. I made coffee earlier, she said. Or tea, whichever you prefer. I hesitated. Coffee sounds good. She moved through the house with that same effortless grace, controlled but soft, always just a little out of reach. I sat at the island, watching her pour 2 mugs. The kitchen lights were dim, casting amber shadows across the room. She slid 1 mug toward me and leaned on the counter. You're not like most people, she said, stirring her own cup slowly. How so? You listen. You pay attention. Most people stare at their phones. You were present. I shrugged, a little embarrassed. Maybe because I don't usually get time like this, she nodded. I get that more than you know. We talked again. About nothing and everything. About traffic tacos and what it felt like to be ambitious and still lonely. The words came easy. Her laugh was real. And I could feel the space between us slowly shrinking. Around midnight, I stretched and stood up. I should probably head out. Early shift tomorrow. She tilted her head slightly, then gave me that look again. The one that paused time. I was hoping you'd stay a little longer. I froze. What do you mean, relax? She said with a small laugh, reading the tension in my shoulders. Not for anything like that. She walked toward the back doors, pulled them open and let the night breeze wash in, thought it might be nice to do something a little crazy. She stepped outside barefoot again and stood by the pool, her toes skimming the surface. A night swim. I laughed nervously. I don't have a swimsuit. She looked over her shoulder, grinning. Neither do I. But we'll keep it decent. Just roll up your pants. Sit on the edge. Live a little. And against every logical thought in my head, I did. Shoes off jeans, rolled legs dangling in the cold water beside hers. The silence wrapped around us, comfortable now, the stars scattered like freckles overhead. I haven't done this in years, she whispered. Same. She looked at me, her eyes soft and reflective. You know, this is the first time in a long time I've just stopped. Not worked, not planned, just been. I nodded. Feels weird, but good. She leaned closer, resting her palms on the tile behind her, staring up at the stars. You're different, Nick. Why you're not afraid to be quiet. Most people fill the air just to avoid their own thoughts. We sat like that for a while. No music, no phones, no ticking clocks. Just water, and breath, and attention that had shifted from nervous to warm. Eventually, she stood brushing her legs dry with a towel. Her blouse clung slightly to her arms from the mist. I have a crazy idea, she said. I'm listening. What if we just kept going? I raised an eyebrow. Going where anywhere? Nowhere. Just grab a blanket, drive out to the beach, and watch the sunrise like we're teenagers who don't have to care about tomorrow. She looked so serious and free all at once that it made my throat tighten. You're serious. Completely. You said you never do things like this. Neither do I anymore. So why not break that rule together, just once? I didn't even hesitate. All right, I said. Let's do it. 15 minutes later, with a thermos of hot coffee and a blanket in the trunk, we were back on the road. The streets were deserted. The city felt like it was ours alone. The beach was dark and nearly empty, just the soft roar of the waves and the occasional cry of a distant gull. We laid the blanket down in the cool sand and sat shoulders brushing wrapped tight against the breeze. I used to come here when I was younger, she said. Before the business, before the house, back when everything felt possible and terrifying at once. Do you miss it every day? And I never tell anyone that. Why me? I asked quietly. She smiled, her profile silhouetted by the silver curve of the moon. Because you're safe. Because you're honest. Because you make me feel seen. I swallowed, unsure of what to say. So I said the only true thing I had. You make me feel that too. The ocean stretched out endlessly in front of us, black and glinting. And just as the first trace of gold touched the horizon, she rested her head lightly on my shoulder. Thank you, she whispered. I really needed this. Me too. And for a few sacred minutes we just sat there, two people with nothing expected and everything unsaid, watching the sun climb out of the sea like a secret. The sun crept higher, melting the darkness into a warm orange glow. Neither of us moved for a long while. Karen stayed tucked against my side, and I wasn't about to shift, not when everything in that moment felt strangely perfect. Eventually, she sat up, rubbing her arms and shaking the sand off her jeans. We should probably head back, she said with a sleepy smile. You've got work, remember? I laughed quietly. Yeah. My boss is going to think I disappeared. We packed up the blanket and coffee thermos without a word, not because there was nothing to say, but because silence didn't feel uncomfortable anymore. It felt earned, peaceful. On the drive back, the early morning light painted the highway in streaks of amber and gold. Her hand rested near mine on the center console. Neither of us reached out. Neither of us needed to. When we pulled into her driveway, the city was just beginning to stir. Lawn sprinklers sputtered. A paperboy on a bike weaved down the street. I grabbed my backpack from the back seat and turned to face her. Thanks for last night, I said. I've never done anything like that before. She leaned her arms against the car door and smiled. "I should be thanking you. I haven't felt that alive in years." We stood there for a beat, both unsure if we were supposed to hug or shake hands, or just nod and walk away. Then she spoke again, softer this time. "I know you've got your life, your work, and I've got mine. I'm not asking for anything complicated, no expectations. But I'd like to see you again, if you ever want to, if you ever have time." Her voice carried no pressure, just quiet sincerity. I nodded slowly. "I'd like that." Her smile widened gentler this time. "Good. Well, you better get going before you're late." I turned and started toward my truck. Then I stopped. "Karen." "Yeah. Would it be okay if I texted you later?" She laughed, leaning back against her car with that same easy charm. "You better." I drove off feeling like I'd lived a small lifetime in just 12 hours. The whole world looked different, like it had cracked open and something brighter had spilled out. At my next job, I went through the motions, scrubbing tile and balancing pH like always, but my mind was elsewhere. And that wasn't the end. Over the next few months, our arrangement became a quiet, unspoken rhythm. Sometimes after a long day I'd stop by, sometimes we'd have dinner, sometimes we'd just sit by the pool and talk the way we did that first night. Other times we'd take long drives with no destination, windows down, music, loud, the breeze in our faces. We never defined it. We didn't introduce each other to friends. We didn't post about it or pretend it was more than it was. But it was something. It was ours. Karen never tried to control the situation. She never asked where I'd been or who I was with. I didn't ask either. We existed in this strange, beautiful middle space. No labels, no promises, just presence. We showed up when it mattered. And somehow that was enough. There were nights where I'd sit on her couch sipping coffee, and she'd curl her legs under herself, listening to me ramble about difficult clients or plans I wasn't sure how to chase. She listened, really listened. And in return, I did the same when she spoke about her past. The men who let her down, the business deals that nearly broke her, the dreams she let go of just to keep moving. We were two people filling a quiet in each other's lives. But time moves, people shift, and we both knew something that beautiful can't last forever. One day I arrived at her house after finishing a job nearby. She had texted me earlier, "If you're free, swing by. I made too much food again." When I got there, she greeted me at the door like always, but something felt different. She didn't say anything at first, just hugged me a little longer. When we sat down in the kitchen island, she looked at me like she'd been carrying something all day. "Nick," she said, "I got an offer. For what? A position. A big one. Overseas." I blinked. "You're moving?" She nodded. "It's not for sure yet, but it's everything I used to dream of. Paris. A full lifestyle shift. But I'd have to leave soon. And it's long-term, possibly permanent." I sat back stunned. Of course I was happy for her. She deserved that. All of it. But something inside me cracked. "So, what happens to this?" I asked quietly. Karen looked down at her hands. "I don't know. I wasn't planning on this. Any of it. You, us. But I've spent most of my life letting fear dictate what I do. I don't want to do that anymore. We didn't cry, we didn't argue, we just sat there in the weight of it." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I don't regret any of it," she said. "Not a single moment." "Me neither." She smiled, eyes glassy. "Even if we stop seeing each other, even if we drift, I want you to remember something." "What's that?" "You made me feel like a person again. Not just someone who built a life, but someone who actually lived one." I couldn't speak. I just nodded. A few weeks later, she left. We had one last night just like that first one. Coffee, a long drive, a quiet beach, no promises, no goodbyes, just thank yous. Just everything unsaid carried in every glance. And then she was gone. But even now, when I pull into a driveway and step out of the truck clipboard in hand, sometimes I think of her, of that whisper by the pool, of the drive down the coast, of the sunrise that didn't ask us to define anything, just to feel it. It started as just another job, a name on a clipboard, an address in a nice neighborhood, a pool to clean. But by the time it ended, I had lived something I still can't fully explain. Something brief, unwritten, undeniably real. Karen wasn't a fantasy. She wasn't some reckless fling. She was a person who let me into her world just long enough to remind me what it means to feel alive, to say yes when your instinct is to stay guarded, to jump when logic says stay grounded. What we had didn't follow the rules. It wasn't supposed to last forever, but not all stories are meant to. Some stories are just moments, strange, fragile, unforgettable moments that shape you long after they're over. Sometimes a connection isn't about permanence, it's about timing. About being exactly who someone needed, exactly when they needed it. And I think we were that for each other. She whispered, "You're making it hard for me to be good." And from that moment on, everything changed. I'll always remember her, the woman in the linen blouse with the quiet smile and the bold heart. The woman who didn't ask for forever but gave me something just as powerful: permission to feel, to let go, to say yes. Not every love has to be loud. Some arrive like a breeze, some leave like the tide. But the memory, it lingers, and maybe that's enough. If this story stirred something in you, if you've ever met someone who pulled you out of your routine even for a moment, then you're not alone. We tell stories like this because they reflect the quiet truths we rarely speak out loud. So drop a comment. Tell us, have you ever had a connection that defied logic but not feeling? And if you want more raw, real, unforgettable moments, subscribe. Hit the bell. Join us. This isn't just a channel. It's where unspoken stories finally get told, and yours might be next.